the County Observer and Monmouthshire Central Advertiser, Abergavenny and Raglan Herald, Usk and Pontypool Messenger, and Chepstow Argus introduce us to the life and exploits of the renowned King Arthur and his Knights of the Round Table.
Chapter 10. From my youth upwards, my spirit walked not with the souls of men, nor looked upon the earth with human eyes. The thirst of their ambition was not mine. My joys, my griefs, my passions, and my powers made me a stranger. Though I wore the form, I had no sympathy with breathing flesh, nor midst the creatures of clay that girded me was there but one who, but of her anon. Byron. King Arthur goes with Merlin to seek the sword. The Lady of the Lake appears and gives him the sword. The virtues of the sword and scabbard. Arthur's first battle against the 6 kings. The valour of Arthur. His horse killed under him and himself struck down. Arthur is rescued by Sir Lancelot of the Lake. Arthur's victory. Rejoicings at Caerleon. When Merlin came into the presence of King Arthur, the king said, I have now need of a sword that will chastise these rebels terribly. Come with me, said Merlin, for hard by there is a sword that I can gain for thee. So they rode out that night till they came to a fair and broad lake, and in the midst of it King Arthur saw an arm thrust up, clothed in white samite, and holding a great sword in the hand. Lo, yonder is the sword I spoke of, said Merlin. Then saw they a damsel floating on the lake in the moonlight. What damsel is that? Asked the king. The Lady of the Lake, said Merlin, for upon this lake there is a rock, and on the rock a noble palace, where she abideth, and she will come towards thee presently, and then speak fair to her that she will give thee that sword. Therewith the damsel came to King Arthur, and saluted him, and he saluted her. Damsel, said the king, what sword is that the arm holdeth above the water? I would that it were mine, for I have no sword. Sir King, said the damsel of the lake, that sword is mine, and if ye will give me a gift when I ask it of you, ye shall have it. By my faith, said Arthur, I will give you any gift that you shall ask or desire. Well, go into yonder barge, said the damsel, and row yourself unto the sword, and take it, together with the scabbard, and I will ask my gift of thee when I see my time. So King Arthur and Merlin alighted, tied their horses to 2 trees, and went into the barge, and rode to the sword that the hand held. And King Arthur took it by the handle and bore it away, and the arm and hand went down under the water. Then Arthur and Merlin came back to land, and returned to Caerleon. As King Arthur journeyed, he looked upon the sword, and liked it passing well. Which liketh you best, said Merlin, the sword or the scabbard? Me liketh best the sword, said Arthur. Ye are unwise, said Merlin, for the scabbard is worth much more than the sword. For while ye have the scabbard upon you, ye shall lose no blood, be ye ever so wounded. Therefore keep well the scabbard always with you. When they arrived at Caerleon, the knights were passing glad to see Arthur return all safe. And on the morrow Merlin bade Arthur set fiercely on the enemy, and in the meantime 300 knights and fighting men went over to King Arthur from the rebels' side. To arms, my liege, cried Merlin, ride forth and conquer, but fight not with the sword that ye had by miracle, until you find yourselves sore beset, then draw it out and do your best. Arthur girded on the wondrous falchion, which was to be the guiding star to victory, and mounting his milk-white charger, sallied forth at the head of his host, and promised to obey Merlin's injunction. When the king's little army was drawn out in array against the mighty and overwhelming forces of the rebels, many a knight looked grave and anxious, but Merlin, seizing his harp, chanted a martial lay that breathed into their breasts hope and confidence by its high promises of victory, while the fearless demeanor of their boy king aroused the old and most experienced warriors to the highest pitch of enthusiasm. A dead silence pervaded the field for a moment, and then King Arthur rode along the line, armed from head to foot in his gilded armour, his beaver up, displaying his heroic countenance to his troops, closely followed by Sir Ector, Sir Kay, Sir Lancelot, and the flower of his nobility. As he rode, he addressed the men with burning eloquence, and was everywhere greeted, and that especially by the archers and common soldiers, with loud shouts of acclaim. Anon he galloped to the front, tossed up his truncheon, and shouted in ringing voice, "Banners advance, St. George for England." To this King Urience retorted with a cry of "Strike now! Forward! Forward!" Then the two hosts couched their lances and charged furiously, while the archers and crossbowmen darkened the air with their incessant flights of bows and arrows. Sir Baudouin, Sir Kay, and Sir Lancelot struck down all opponents on right and left, while King Arthur, who had posted himself in the very centre of the van, performed such prodigies of valour as to raise the admiration even of the opposing kings. It was a desperate struggle, but Arthur, throwing himself into the hottest vortex of the fight, unhorsed many a gallant rider, and drove back whole companies of knights who fled before him. King Arthur was nobly supported by his brave knights. King Lot charged in the rear of King Arthur's army, and King Caradoc set fiercely on Arthur in front. But the gallant prince fought like a raging lion, hewed down all who opposed him on either hand, until his horse was slain under him, and he was thrown to the ground, where he lay prostrate, half stunned by the fall, while King Urience, striding over him, pressed the point of his sword to his throat, and called upon him to yield or die. Then Sir Lancelot, with 3 other knights, rushed to the king's rescue and beat off his assailant. King Arthur now mounted another horse, which was brought him, and drew his good sword Excalibur, which was so bright in his enemies' eyes, that it gave light like 30 torches. Then, putting himself at the head of a gallant company of knights who had rallied round him, he made a furious onset and drove the foe back with great slaughter. And the common people of Caerleon at the same time arose and joined in the fray, and with their clubs and staves slew many knights. Then Merlin came to Arthur and counselled him to stay the pursuit. The victorious young king at once took this advice, and commanded that the trumpets should sound the retreat. After this victory there was great rejoicing in Caerleon, where the king held high feast and festival, and where his faithful knights exhibited their skill and prowess in a splendid tournament.